Sharon is the president of Sensei Enterprises, a digital forensics information security and information technology firm in Fairfax. She's the author of the noted electronic evidence blog, Rising Lucky, and is co-host of the Legal Talk Network podcast series with Digital Edge, Lawyers with Technology, as well as Digital Detectives. She's a frequent author on information security and electronic evidence topics. She was the president of the Virginia State Bar from June 2013 to June 2014, and currently serves as the president of the Fairfax Law Foundation. John Simek is vice president of Sensei Enterprises. Excuse me. He has a national reputation as a digital forensics technologist and has testified as an expert witness throughout the U.S. He holds a degree in engineering from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and an MBA in finance from St. Joseph's University. He holds a prestigious Certified Information Systems Security Professional and NK Certified Examiner certifications, in addition to multiple other technical certifications. He currently provides information technology support to hundreds of Washington, D.C. area law firms, legal entities, and corporations. He's a co-host of the Legal Talk Network podcast, Digital Detectives, and is a frequent author and speaker on legal technology, information security, and electronic evidence topics. Let's give a warm welcome to Sharon Nelson and John Simek.
Thank you, Everett. Thank you very much. Every year we come here and we do this, and every year you guys look younger, and I do not forgive you for this. I know my bio, which was well-intentioned, is slightly out of date. I am the immediate past president of the Fairfax Law Foundation now, and very happy to say that my blog has just been awarded a great honor by the ABA Journal. It has been named to the Blog Hall of Fame, so that's always a good thing. Ask questions anytime. We have tried to refocus this a little bit from preceding years because some of the nuts and bolts are better read than talked about in a classroom setting. So we instead are focusing today more on hot topics in technology. So we do welcome your questions, even if you hijack us. Why should anyone listen to us? Well, this is our new book, which will be released in January, The Sole and Small Firm Legal Technology Guide. We attempt to give best-of-breed solutions, but always with an eye toward budgets as well, because most of you who are young do not have a lot of money to spend. How many of you already have legal jobs? Oh, good. That makes me happy. Last year there weren't so many. How many of you will be working for large firms? Not many. Okay. How many of you will be working for small firms? Most of you. And how many are going to work for the government? Oh, we have a lot of those today. Okay. Okay. How many want to be their own solo? Most challenging. But good luck.
The boss is always right, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's what we always say. Yeah. We're never late to work, it just never worries about that. Technology moves at this kind of breakneck pace. It's very hard to stay ahead of it. If you're trying to practice law, it's very difficult. We do recommend that because of this, that you take at least one tech or cybersecurity course every year as a CLE. These phones of ours, I mean, we all are married to them to one extent or another. They have empowered us. They have also enslaved us. I know I have had arguments with lawyers about why they have to sleep with their phone by their bed or in their bed. And even in some of the largest firms in Virginia, they tell me, well, if I don't answer a call from my client at 2:30 in the morning, they'll find someone else who will. Well, I don't need or want those kind of clients. My clients understand my business hours and understand that I will check my phone in the morning. And in the meantime, I don't want to live that kind of life. So those are the kind of work balance, life balance decisions that people have to make as lawyers. And I'm always on the side of disconnecting some of the time. In terms of the most popular phones for lawyers, overwhelmingly in the beginning it was the iPhone. We are beginning to see a shift toward Android, and of course BlackBerry is dying a slow death, except in Canada. And John, you want to take it from there?
Oh, man, come on, man. Well, the newest BlackBerry, though, actually will run Android, so that's going to be interesting to see what kind of traction that may or may not get. Large firms, however, are still using BlackBerries. So because of the security, because of the controllability in their environment. A lot of New York firms I know that we have friends and colleagues that work in large New York firms, and they're still in love with BlackBerry. I love the BlackBerry. It's got the greatest keyboard in the world, but it's real crud when it comes to everything else. So I'll sacrifice that. From a security perspective, the question we get asked a lot is, what is the most secure smartphone? And that's not the right question, because none of them are secure out of the box. not as well, except for the black phone. But they're all, the question should be, which one can be made the most secure? And that's through adding software, changing configurations, doing all that kind of thing. The answer there is the Android phone. Because it is open source, because you can modify things, because you can install and control what happens to that operating system. That's not to say that everyone does it correctly and that they do it right, but the government, DoD, has Android phones that are actually certified for secret communications now. So that's really where things are heading as well. Apple has improved tremendously in security. When it first came out, it was one of the worst, absolute worst in security. They've now upped it because of different iOS, different models that are there. The encryption that's available within the iPhone is very, very strong. The problem with Apple has been, and the challenges they've had, is they've always wanted to make their operating systems work on old stuff, right? So that they have one OS that they move between. That is really, really difficult to do because security was a bolt-on to the iPhone, and it was an afterthought. So now they've got to sit there and try to deal with that, change the operating system, and yet people that still have iPhone 3s, as an example, still try to run that operating system. So it's a real challenge for Apple to do that.
Well, the other problem with an iPhone is that it holds so much more data than any of the other phones.
I don't think it's a problem. I think it's great.
Well, we think it's great. It's digital forensic technologists. We love all the evidence that these iPhones give us. We do a happy dance when iPhones walk into our, well, not on their own, but when they come into our digital laboratory, we're very happy to see them. It's maybe by a factor of 200 times more data. And lawyers are always thinking, well, I'm not saving anything to my iPhone. I'm opening up a document and reading it, but I'm not saving it. Well, the minute you hit the home button, it takes a screenshot. So yes, you did. You saved it. Did you listen to a voicemail on your iPhone? Yeah, it's on your phone. And they don't realize that. So something to bear in mind.
So since we're talking about smartphones and security, encryption is your friend. You need to encrypt those devices, encrypt the information that's on there. With an iPhone, it's very, very simple. It automatically happens when you set a PIN or a passphrase code. Now, if you've got the latest iOS version now and the iPhone 6, the default passphrase is 6 characters instead of the default 4 in the previous iOS version. No matter what it is, you should change it and make it something that's stronger than the default. And I know that's a pain, if you need to type in more than 4 digits. But there's software specifically available that you can purchase. It's a couple $100 that has been made specifically to hack an iPhone and crack its password in less than 15 minutes. So because of that, you want to get around that, not have that ability to have that software impact your phone. So change that to something that's a little bit longer, whether it's 6 or 8 or somewhere in that range. With an Android phone, the current operating systems of Android, it's really simple. It's a little checkbox. It says encrypt phone. There's also a checkbox if you have a memory card installed, then a memory expansion card, that says to encrypt the memory card. You want to do that as well. And then you define what the lock code is, and then it encrypts the contents. But in BlackBerry, you set there's a content protection, you turn that on, and that's what encrypts the BlackBerry phones that are there. But if older Android phones don't have that built in, you have to use a third-party software. I would suggest that if you are running an old version of Android, that isn't one of the later versions. Who brought you? Then replace the phone, because the older operating systems just they're not getting patches anymore. They're not upgrading, and so they're relatively insecure.
I tangled completely around the chair. You can come up and help me if you'd like.
You're what?
I tangled it around the chair.
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
Come up and help me while I'm talking. You did that with me before when this was a disaster destruction. I think if the chair leg is actually caught on it. It's impossible to imagine.
You're not going to steal this microphone, are
I'm
you?
not going to steal the microphone. Thank you. If you would kindly unravel me, then it won't fall on the floor again. Thank you very much. This is the price of being married to your partner. And it will explain the occasional hostility.
And my stepdaughter just gave me a T-shirt, which I love, and it says on the front of it, it says, "I'm here because you broke something."
It's true. John fixes it all.
Yeah.
Let us move to cloud computing now that I am untethered again from my chair.
Question?
Oh, yeah.
Sharon, before we leave, John, you said older Android. Can you define older?
Something that's running Android 3 or earlier.
And before I tackle cloud, let me just mention that I know that we have a hot swap to the next session. John and I will be, we're very courteous, we finish on time, and we will be outside, but we will be outside and receptive to any questions. So we will wait a few moments till we see there are no further questions. Everyone who has looked at cloud computing by lawyers has said, yes, it's okay, and it's always, yes, it's okay, but, and it's different in different states. So the legal ethics opinion that you want to read is Leo 1872. It basically says you have to make...
If you're going to practice in Virginia.
If you're going to practice in Virginia, which I assume is why you're here, you want to make sure that you make certain practical investigations of the security of your data and how it's going to be held by the cloud. What happens if somebody shows up from law enforcement and they've got the right paperwork? Are they just going to turn it over? Most clouds, the answer is yes. Can you negotiate a provision whereby you are notified so you have a chance to file a motion to quash? Well, you're probably not going to get that with most large cloud providers, but the smaller ones will do so. And Microsoft is an exception to that rule. Microsoft will notify you. So we have seen some movement in some good directions. If you are going to go to the cloud, and roughly 50% of lawyers are in the cloud, many more probably are in the cloud and don't know they're in the cloud because they don't understand that when they have a Gmail address, they are functioning in the cloud. So we have a lot of folks who are in the cloud, but not securely. And the reason is the cloud may store your data securely, it may transmit your data securely, but the clouds themselves hold the decryption key, not you. What you want is user-controlled encryption. So you're going to create the decryption key. That means that nobody who is a bad guy at the cloud provider can get your data. If law enforcement comes to the cloud provider, all they can give back to law enforcement is garbage. It's all encrypted. And even the NSA cannot break encryption. Not strong encryption. And if you're wondering what they use PGP. So that's a pretty good recommendation for that. You also want to look at the physical security of the cloud provider. We actually made a visit before we signed our clients up and checked out the physical security, the man traps, and how many cameras there were, the mega batteries that they have, all the redundancies. So if there's some sort of an issue, everything always switches over to something else, and there's enough battery life that everything can come back online, and nothing goes down, nothing crashes. So you want to know a lot about the physical security. You want to know the history of the company. Has it been around for a while? Who's in that data center? We found that our data center was being used by Google and NASA, and that's a couple of reputable characters. So that was another good thing. And then we negotiated 3 rounds of changes in the contract. They all had to do with legal ethics. And because they had the promise of the business, they were willing to negotiate. So don't think the smaller ones will not negotiate with you. They absolutely will. Terms of service, you got to read them. I mean, it's terrible. They go on for 5,000 words. I feel everybody's pain. We are such an impatient society. We want something, we go click, 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 click. And I love the terms of service that said, boy, you read fast. When you go click through and they said, yeah, they know you don't read. So that's where it all is. And that's where they disclaim all liability and say you have to go to arbitration. We've seen several of those cases now. You can't bring a lawsuit. You got to go to arbitration. Everything that you need to know about your client provider, except for maybe the history and the economics, physical security, but everything else is going to be governed by this terms of service. So make sure that you've read it completely.
And in today's day and age, too, I would add another question to your questionnaire when you're dealing with these cloud providers, and that's, have you ever had a data breach? Because more and more and more we're hearing about that, and if so, what did you do? How did you respond? Who paid for it? Did you notify the clients? All that kind of stuff.
Get guaranteed that the terms of service will disclaim liability for a breach.
Yep.
They will be liable only to the extent that you have paid them money. So your own money is all you're going to get back.
So typically when we're talking about the cloud, where most folks start is storage, right? Online storage. So that's going to be whether it's iCloud or Dropbox or Google Drive, OneDrive, any of those things. That's typically where they start. Not necessarily do they start using case management platforms and those kinds of things. So when we're talking about cloud storage, as Sharon said, you want to make sure, at least you want to try as best as you can, to control that encryption key. With all of these things that we're showing you right up here, they hold the master decryption key. So they can decrypt that data. So that's not really where you want to be. That's fine if you want to put your apple pie recipe up in Dropbox, but your electronic discovery and that stuff in your what you're going to give to the other side, probably not a good idea to put it in an unencrypted form in Dropbox.
But that's what we see all the time. We're seeing productions made in e-discovery through Dropbox, and the lawyers who are doing it are crazy.
Yeah, and they're not protecting it. So a better solution, and you can use those products, right? But Box Enterprise, Spider Oak as an example is a zero knowledge cloud provider. They don't have that master decryption key. You actually set your account up, you set your password and all that, and the encryption key then is then generated at that point.
Spider Oak is used by many of the journalists because it is so secure, and that's a good recommendation right there. Everybody who worked on Edward Snowden and stuff, everybody was using Spider Oak.
Yes, sir.
Are these in the files that should be taking notes of these companies, or are they in the?
Anybody who wants a PDF of the presentation has only to write me, and our email is in the materials. Happy to do that.
But we're going to lock it down so you can't open the PDF. Just kidding.
We're a security company, yeah.
I'm just kidding. But what these other products are here is you can use the OneDrives of the world, the Dropboxes and those things. And these are really bolt-on products, things like BoxCryptor and Vivo. What happens there is that you put the data into that service, it then encrypts with your encryption key, and then transfers it over to, let's say, OneDrive, or transfers it over to Dropbox. So what's actually being stored within Dropbox is encrypted data that you've controlled the encryption. Okay, so these are alternatives to that. Some of the other ones that are up there, secure file sharing. You see the Citrix that's up there. ZixCorp is a secure encrypted email service provider. Is one of the services that we use. There's a lot of different companies out there that do these kinds of things. But these are where, if you're talking about client confidential information and that communications, then you want to investigate these types of solutions where you control that encryption key.
And remember, you are now governed, or will be soon governed, by the new Rule 1.1, which says that you have to be aware of the benefits and risks associated with technology. There are also changes to 1.6. Those are presently before the Virginia Supreme Court. They've been approved by Virginia State Bar's Council. So I would imagine that you will see them come out very shortly in some form or another. So you really do need to understand some of this stuff.
So as an alternative, instead of using a service provider, like a Dropbox or a Box or those kinds of things, you can create your own private cloud. So this is just an example of one product called Transporter by Connect. You go to connecteddata.com. What this is a 1 terabyte. Probably your solos will be using that. It's several $100s, but it's a hard drive that you connect to your network that you define the security access to. You define the encryption for. So think of it as Dropbox in your pocket. You've taken this, you set it down there, you've defined folders, you can share folders out to clients as an example. Maybe there are certain information and documents that are in there that you want to share with your clients. You define the folder, you share it, you give the client the link, you tell them you create an ID for that client. They have an ID and a password then, and they're the only ones that can access that information. So you maintain control of that data then. So these are some other alternatives. This is just one of the products that are available that do this type of thing. It is encrypted in transit, it's encrypted in storage, and you control and define it. Now, as you see there, as you get up into the 8 terabyte, 12 terabyte, they have units that will handle larger volumes, but now you're talking thousands of dollars to get started, in tens of thousands. So I think most of you are probably not going to be in this realm here. You'll be down towards that solo. Yes, sir.
For those of us who aren't either going to be solo practitioners or at very new firms, I imagine there are already practices and systems in place. They're not likely to want to change on the recommendation of a brand new lawyer.
It depends. There may or may not be.
Are there certain areas that you would recommend focusing efforts on over others, whether it's the cell phones used or the cloud storage or whatever it may be?
The number one concern is protection of your client information, securing that, no matter where it is, right?
And we have on free on our website any number of articles on everything we're talking about today, including the questions to ask your cloud provider, how to acquire and preserve social media evidence, the smartphones and how they can be secured. There's a ton. So our books cost money, of course, but the articles do not. So, download any of the articles that interest you. And a lot of times bringing in somebody and saying, are you interested in talking to, a lot of consultants, ourselves included, will go in and do an assessment and won't charge anything for the assessment. And then sometimes you get them to listen. And honestly, they're worried because they can hear the pitter-patter of the client's feet leaving the door, because clients are so worried about law firm security and don't believe it's very good, and it generally is not very good, except at the large firm level, where these days, if you can believe it, they are now spending 9.7% among the AmLaw 100. They're spending it on cybersecurity, and that's almost the same number as they spend on marketing. And that's been forced down their throats by their clients.
Yeah, the clients are gonna, one of the trends, do we have a slide on that, about security audit?
That's the very last, so we'll get there.
One of the trends that we're seeing is it's being client-focused and client-driven, is, as Sharon said, they're concerned about law firms and the lack of security, the historical lack of security and lack of technology that's been in law firms. And so the clients are coming out to their law firms and saying, here's an audit questionnaire. I want you to fill this thing out. Tell me about your security practices. What are you using? I'm giving you my data. I need to make sure that you're securing it. So we're seeing that is coming a lot aware, and a law firms don't know how to answer the questions. We help our clients, and they look at it and go, can I answer yes here? No. You got to spend money before you can answer yes.
And actually, that is generally, for all that we market and do all this other stuff, it's almost always because they've got one of those client security audits that they have to fill out themselves. That's always what drives them to actually doing something, because now they risk the loss of the client. So it's not a bad idea to get an assessment and see what they can be persuaded to do. A lot of it is cheap. A lot of it is process, a lot is policy, a lot is training and
Some's free. Some already own.
Yeah, some they already own and they're just not using. So it's remarkable when they see the numbers, they realize that for a fairly small price, the smaller firms can in fact achieve a reasonable level of cybersecurity.
But I think to answer your question, the number one, what you have to focus on in your head and think about is securing a client's data. So no matter where it is or how you're moving it around or whatever. So anything that helps do that.
And the reason you don't hear about any of the large firms being breached, and we know that the FBI and Mandia, they've all said that at least 80% of the large firms have been breached. They simply can't afford, from a PR standpoint, to have that made public, and although their ethical rules may require that they tell their clients, it's clear that most of them don't. So it is kind of a dirty secret that's kept in the closet, and we need to do something about that. Education is one of the ways to do something about that. There is, by the way, going to be right here at the Convention Center on April 25th, the Virginia State Bar Tech Show. One full day of CLE for $100. You can't beat it. The registration is already open. The last time we had VSB Tech Show, we had 180 people on the waiting list, so you don't want to wait. You want to sign up for that right away. And all of the speakers are national speakers who speak with John and I at ABA Tech Show. And they're very nice, and they come only for reimbursement, so no honorariums. But that is going to be an excellent day of CLE education. Social media, we always have to kind of divide it in half, because half is about how you are going to use it as evidence in a case, how you're going to gather it, protect it, preserve it, and how you're going to authenticate it. Well, there's an article on that on our website, along with everything else. So for that side of it, I'm going to tell you, just go look there. But at your age, most of you are very young, and most of you are more interested in how do I use social media ethically for marketing. And that there are so many marketing rules, and I think Virginia's are pretty outmoded at this point. We haven't looked at them in a while. We do intend to look at them. I chair the Future of Law Committee at the Virginia State Bar, and we are now looking at what we need to do to bring them into conformity with the way you guys are marketing, not only here, but what's happening on LegalZoom and Avo and all the other places. So you do have to read those ethics rules and make sure that you are doing what they say. Particularly, LinkedIn has been problematic. If somebody recommends you, you have to approve that recommendation. So because you have seen it and have to approve it, you better make darn sure that that recommendation conforms to the marketing rules and doesn't say anything that might be construed as misrepresenting. LinkedIn also has, of course, endorsements. They're very problematic because people who don't even know you will endorse you, hoping that you'll endorse them back. And they may endorse you, as they have endorsed me, for things that I am not competent in. They just make it up, and they endorse you. Well, according to the rules, you have to make sure that that endorsement doesn't show. In LinkedIn, you can't delete endorsements, you have to hide them. So now you're stuck with reviewing endorsements periodically and hiding them. It is very annoying, but it is the system. Facebook is not a great place to market. I have been marketing there. I have played with it. I say Facebook is a great place to sell widgets, but professional services, it's much harder. So my hard-earned dollar should be your lesson. I think I've thrown a lot of money down a rat hole, so I would not encourage you to do that. However,
Zuckerberg thanks you.
yes, he does. Yes, he owes me on that one.
He deals with a lot of people.
LinkedIn is still probably the social media site of choice among lawyers because it is fundamentally a resume site where you can find people who went to school with you or you have other connections with, same field of law, et cetera, et cetera. This book, LinkedIn in 1 Hour for Lawyers, is an excellent, this is the second edition, I believe. It is an excellent guide. It is available at the ABA web store. So if you don't know how to use LinkedIn effectively, I would start there. Some of the groups on LinkedIn have gotten overrun by marketers, which happens everywhere, people self-promoting. So I'm not as enthused about the groups as I once was, but I have found other ways to use it that have been very helpful. Twitter in 1 Hour for Lawyers. I love Twitter because Twitter is what reporters watch. And so because I blog all the time, 4 times a week religiously, reporters are always getting my blog, and the title of the blog is what I tweet, that they are watching me, and they will call when they have a story. So on average, I get contacted by reporters at least once or twice a week. So once you establish yourself as someone who really knows something, that could be great marketing because, of course, when you appear in Forbes and CNN, and I was even in Oprah's magazine, if you can believe it. That's when I finally got respect for my adult daughters. Mom's in Oprah. There you go. So this is also a good book to teach you about how to use Twitter effectively.
So one of the other requirements for your practice is going to be some productivity app, right? You're all lawyers, you're generating documents, those types of things. You need something to do that with. Office 2016, I think where we're seeing a lot of push now, though, is towards Office 365, cloud-based, and especially some of the small business and professional versions of Office 365, because with an Office 365 subscription, not only do you get the ability to use Office 365 in the cloud, and Microsoft's offering, but also you can install the standalone version of Office on up to 5 machines. So that is a very, very cost-effective solution. Take a look at what those pricing, pricing models are. So you're going to get email, you're going to get Word, PowerPoint, Excel, what else? OneNote, I think, is part of that. So take a look at those bundles for Office 365. We've seen a lot of push going there. Office 2016 has been released. There really isn't much difference between Office 2016 and 2013. So if you're familiar with Office 2013 and using it, I would not upgrade to go to Office 2016. The exception being, Office 2016 has great collaboration tools. So as an example, you can do real-time collaboration. So if you had Office 2016 in your machine and your document is sitting up in a OneDrive or a Dropbox or whatever, it actually interfaces to the cloud, to any cloud storage. You could have multiple people accessing that same file up in the cloud, and if somebody makes a change, you see that change immediately in your Word or whatever it is. So that online real-time collaboration is a big, big feature of Office 2016. If you're not intending to do that or you don't do it very often, I wouldn't spend the money to upgrade. Office 365, as I said, there's a big push towards that. How secure it is? It's very secure. Microsoft has gone to great lengths. They want your business. They want to have everybody, they want to kill Google Docs is what they want to do. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. They have all kinds of certifications now. They're HIPAA compliant. They're SEC compliant as far as archiving and regulatory pieces. There's a lot of, they're FIPS compliant for encryption, for government. So they've got all these things that they're out there getting ISO certifications and things like that for Office 365. So those are all available to you. You may have to pay a little more in order to get those products that comply with that, but the technology is there.
But
And it can be very, very secure.
They did suffer an outage.
Well, everybody does.
But that's one of the issues.
Your
What
cable
happens
company
when you
went out
can't
too,
get
you know?
What happens when you can't
You
get
got a
it?
thunderstorm, and DirecTV went out too, but they do suffer outages, but they're very, very quick on recovering and doing all of that stuff. The one thing Sharon mentioned before about terms of service, the Microsoft terms of service, and I don't really, I read all these things, it's very detail oriented. It pains me, but the Microsoft terms of service, they actually have a provision in there so that if law enforcement comes with a valid subpoena, court order, whatever it is, they will not turn their data over. They tell them it's the user's data. You go to the user, and they will notify you then that someone's made a request to access your information. So that's that provision, and they spell it out in black and white.
Now, that may not happen under the Freedom Act, which was formerly the Patriot Act, and the Freedom Act, of course, is an interesting misnomer. But in any event, it's not yet clear how that is operating with that provision. We don't know. Under the Patriot Act, they would get the data and the company would be gagged. It's not clear to me what's happening under the Freedom Act.
Yeah, I like that Microsoft at least is trying to be very transparent.
A lot of the companies are trying to stand up now to the government requests. Case management, very important. Too many firms are not using it. They tell me often when I ask, well, what do you use for case management? They say they use Outlook. Well, Outlook is not a case management system. It's not close to a case management system. We have literally seen over 20,000 emails in an inbox. That's not managing diddly. One of our friends saw over 40,000 emails in an inbox. That's not management at all. Once you get below the fold, as they say, below what you can see on the screen, likely you're going to get to a lot of that stuff. So there are a lot of ways. Again, there's articles on our website about managing your email, but you need a true case management system. And John, we are down to about 12 minutes.
These are just some samples of case management. I like Practice Master. It's one of my favorites. That's an on-premise solution. Clio, Rocket Matter, those are cloud-based solutions. Typically, for a lot of solo small firms, that's kind of where they start, and they're very, very affordable. They do billing, they do contact management, they've got some document assembly, document management capabilities, contact management, calendaring, court rules. You can do all this kind of stuff within those cloud products. Okay. Amicus and Time Matters. Amicus makes a cloud version as well as a local version. Time Matters is local, is an on-prem solution. Time Matters is an extremely, extremely powerful product. Very expensive, very complicated. A long lead time to learn it. We haven't done a new single Time Matters installation in over 15 years.
Practice Master and
Practice
Clio
Master.
are number 1 and 2 recommendations.
Time and billing, so the case management stuff is the front office things, your intake and all that, your management, your cases. Billing, time slips is by far the most popular billing package that we see in solo small firm market. But that's all it does, is billing. It does trust accounting, but it's not an accounts payable system. But it's very, very tailored to the legal profession. So when you first install it, you tell it what kind of industry you are, and if you say lawyer, it then populates all the kinds of stuff that you would need within there. It's very customizable as well. But that's all that it does. Tab 3 is the companion to Practice Master. So it's the billing package that goes with Practice Master, which is really where you ultimately want to end up. You want to have your billing and your case management system talking to each other so you're not duplicating things. So when you respond to an email message, you're done. And guess what? That time that you spent was captured and automatically will go into your billing package. And you don't have to do a thing. When you're doing legal research, it captures all of that stuff and it assigns it to the matter. And you don't have to enter that stuff. So that's where ultimately you want to be, where your practice management environment includes that whole case management piece and the billing piece, complete with accounts payable if you need that, the trust accounting if you need that as well. So it does all of that stuff. Whenever you get into hybrid solutions where you're using QuickBooks for billing and accounting and paying your bills, your operating expense, and you're using some time slips for invoicing, Well, now you got two separate systems. Do you want to try to get them to talk to each other, which is to be a pain? It's always, always better if you can integrate all of those functions across a single platform.
There's only one document management system that we recommend for small, mid, and it's WorldBox. It's wonderful, it's the best, there is no other solution. So I'm going to stop right there because that's all there is to say.
Yep.
It is the best at keeping all your emails and all your documents together in one place. Nothing better.
And very affordable.
It's not expensive.
It's not expensive, and it doesn't take a huge computer to run either. You're going to need some sort of PDF generation, right? Because especially more and more courts now, the whole federal court system now is doing electronic filing. Everything's going with PDF. So Adobe now is doing. They used to be 6, 7, 8, 9, Adobe 11, and then they threw a curveball at us and called it Acrobat DC, which is really for the direct cloud because they're doing more and more cloud integration now with Acrobat. But you want to get, if you're going with the Adobe product, the professional version, not the standard. The reason being is the professional version includes things that you need as a lawyer. Redaction, date stamping, those types of things. That is not available in the standard version.
Now, there are cheaper alternatives. This is one of them.
Yeah.
Power PDF, we're not going to talk about it because of time. Security suites, certainly you have to have one. You know, there are a lot of good ones, but people always want to know, what do you guys use? We use Kaspersky and we use Trend Micro. We have found them both to be excellent. There is no silver bullet. If you have a determined, sophisticated hacker with sophisticated tools and he's targeted you, he will get in. He will get in, there's no question about that. Or she. But the mantra is no longer keep the barbarians outside the gates. The mantra now is detect and respond. So that's a whole other session, but you do need to make sure also you're controlling your mobile devices with this as well.
Today, in today's day and age, you need to have a password manager. I think everybody has to have one of these because you should not be using the same password for multiple sites, for multiple logins, for any of that stuff. They should be long, they should be complex, they should be absolutely impossible for you to remember. That's how they should be. So what do you need to remember? You need one of these things, a password manager, to hold all that stuff. And what a password manager is an encrypted vault, a big bucket that encrypts all of your passwords and logons. And all you need is a strong password to unlock that vault, just one. So you need to remember one strong password. So you're dependent upon it's encrypted, the data is encrypted, but you're dependent upon the strength of the password to open that vault. 1, 2, 3, 4 is not a good password. So, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 isn't either. So, use a strong password. Now, these are some samples up there. Some are free, some are paid. When you're dealing with some are open source, as you can see there, they're all good. They all encrypt. Some have some slight design flaws in them, but they all do their job very well. The issue that you're really going to need to think about when you're dealing with password managers is, do you want your encrypted vault to be potentially stored in the cloud, like LastPass does that, as an example? Or do you want it where you have the data and it's under your control? I use e-wallet personally. I have the database is on my laptop, it also synchronizes through the smartphone, but I have it, I own it.
It's encrypted, but
It's encrypted, but I have it, it's not in the cloud.
Yeah, I like that, by the way.
Yes.
E-wallet is good.
If something happened to your phone and laptop, you just kind of be out of luck, but
If I lost both, yeah. That's why you need to back it up.
Which we do.
Yes.
Which we do. So Windows 10, these are some of the features you can see here. We are basically fans, I think, of Windows 10.
Yeah.
Some of you downloaded it without intending to. Some of you downloaded it too early. Some of you have downloaded it and it's working just fine. The biggest issue about Windows 10 is not everyone is compliant yet with Windows 10. Almost everyone has said that they will be compliant at the end of this month. So we always wait a few months after the release of the new OS before we put it on clients. So we will probably begin doing that in January or February timeframe. But we are urging them to hold off because there are so many, particularly the security suites, are saying that
Enterprise security.
some of them will not be ready until the end of this month. Encryption, You know, it used to be hard, there was public keys, private keys, you had to exchange them, you didn't understand it, it was terrible. Now, there's no excuse for not encrypting where it's warranted. Email encryption is now easy. You install a product like ZixCorp, Z-I-X-C-O-R-P, and for less than $10 per seat per month, what you get on your Outlook screen, it integrates with Outlook, is a button that says encrypt and send. You know what? You don't have to know any math anymore. You don't have to exchange keys anymore. All you have to do is click on a button, and even a lawyer can do that. So we have now seen the very rapid adoption of ZixCorp among our own clients and others. And you know, I see ZixCorp more than I see any other email encryption program. So I'm going to suggest you start there, although there are others that we mentioned in our books, etc.
But you can also configure it so that you don't have to push a button.
Yes,
Every single message goes out encrypted.
But yes, and you can do that. And some people do that because they're afraid they'll forget to push the button. Okay, but then everything is encrypted. So, you know, if you want to use poor man's encryption, we'll tell you how to do it. This is not what we recommend, because we'd rather see you have another product. But if you want to encrypt a document, because many of us, what we attach to our emails are the documents that we want to protect. So whether it's a PDF document or a Word document, you simply place an open password on it. How do you do that? You go to help and you say, how do I put an open password on it? You can look in YouTube and search on the same thing and actually watch somebody do it. Very, very simple stuff, and that will encrypt the document. So this is the stuff that I told you we're not going to talk to you about. All this stuff about the computers of today, laptops of today, tablets, all in your written materials. All the stuff about Macs in your written materials. All the stuff about servers are in your written materials. It says also in your written materials that we will give you current specs, although what's in there is current today because this book is coming out in January. But we will continue if you just say, hey, I saw you speak 2 years ago, or I bought your book, or whatever, and just write to Sensei, and we will go ahead and give you our new specs. That's a pretty good offer. This is our friend Tom Mile. Tom is an iPad expert. He is formidable. He is very engaging to listen to. If you ever have the opportunity to take a CLE that he teaches or an online webinar, he's wonderful. Tom will be here. He's coming for DSB Tech Show. And if you're into the iPad, you don't want to miss Tom. And this is his third edition of iPad in 1 hour for lawyers. So lawyers glommed onto the iPad from the very beginning. At one point, we had over 90% of lawyers who had a tablet had an iPad. That is changing over time. To you.
iPad Air, right? They got a lot of different models of the iPads. iPads are great if you're going to be a litigator because they're small. You can annotate. You can put your notes on there. There's great presentation software for trial presentation. TrialPad is one of the most popular iPad apps for trial presentation. But that's kind of where it stops. If you're not a litigator, if you're a transactional lawyer, it's a pain in the butt to compose a document on an iPad. It's not a laptop replacement.
And here is the next version.
This is a bigger, not laptop replacement.
It's a bigger, not laptop, yeah. And you know what? Let's stop there because I want to make sure we have time to talk about the Surface Pro 4. I am the Surface Pro 3. Greatest thing since sliced bread. It is a true laptop replacement. And I've only got the 3. I don't own the 4 yet. That's my budget. It's great. The Surface 3 has served me admirably. I have taken it on cruises. I have taken it to Europe. I have been abroad for 10 days or more, and I have never missed that I didn't have a laptop. It has the full office suite on it. You have to buy the keyboard to go with it, which is kind of, that annoying me. But with the keyboard, you have full functionality as though you had a complete laptop with you. So I highly, highly recommend. We're starting to see enterprise deployment of the 3 last year or this year, and we're going to see the 4, I'm sure.
I would suggest that if you're going to buy a new computer, you look at the Surface Pro 4 first, with a docking station.
Yes.
And that's your primary computing device.
I agree. That's going to save you money in the end. A little more up front, but it's going to save you money in the end.
So you'll stick this thing in a docking station in your office as an example. You'll have a keyboard. You can have 2 monitors, mouse, that whole thing. So it works just like a regular thing.
So now you're not using the slightly smaller keyboard. You're using the great big keyboard, and you've got your 2 monitors up there. But when you go home, you can manage well enough with just the Surface Pro. So this is the Surface Book,
Surface
which
Book.
we don't like as well because of the money, and because when you take the keyboard apart and make it a tablet, the battery only lasts an hour and a half or so. Yeah, people go, are you kidding? Because we're used to our tablets.
It's too much money for it.
It's
I
too
would
much
stick
money
with
for
Surface
what you
Book.
get. I'd stay away from it, and we are at the end of our time, and we will be outside, and thank you very much for letting us come talk to you.